Please, Sammi. Thank you. So just a quick brief on our digital for those of you who don't know about us. So we are a digital agency currently in the UK, but shortly going to go a little bit further afield. So more on that on social media soon. And our whole purpose is to help accelerate our clients' digital capabilities in a lot of different ways. So the next slide gives a bit more detail on how we go about doing that. And it's effectively split up into three main areas that form a bit of a circle. So we've got our guide function, which is a service that employs a load of experts, be it in different verticals and different technology sets, who really come in and help you to tackle the really tough questions that you might have within your organization and help you to develop a roadmap and a strategy in order to tackle that. That quite often then leads on to the build phase, which is a large part of our organisation. So we've got a lot of uber talented people, a couple of which you're going to hear from in a little bit, who work on the build in and amongst our client teams to help to deliver digital products in a quick way, but also upskill the teams that they're working in and amongst at the same time. And we've also then got our teach function. Some of that teach element comes organically from working in those co-located blended teams, and we help to build people up that way. But we've also got a very mature academy function as well. So that academy serves both our internal colleagues, but also some of our clients as well, as they accrue learning credits and come to us for more formal courses around lots of different areas, both very highly technical courses, but also some of the more analyst community type courses and some of the stuff that you'll hear today. So we are sponsoring Leeds Digital Festival. We've got a lot of talks over the next coming weeks. Obviously had to hastily rearrange now that we're all online, but we've got still hopefully a load of good talks for you guys to subscribe to. If anybody's got any questions about AND, then feel free to contact us through what we're going to send out at the end of the talk, but also the speakers today, you'll find them on LinkedIn if anybody's got any questions. And if you've got questions as you go along, just due to the nature of the amount of people that we've got on the call, if you could just make a note of it, and then we'll structure the Q&A so that we can hopefully get the most out of it towards the end of the talk. So, if everybody's ready, then we'll move on to Sammi, who's going to talk to you about powering your product roadmap.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris, and welcome everybody. As I said, good to see some friendly faces on the call. Thank you all so much for coming along, and I hope you get something useful out of today. So, a bit about me, for those who don't know me. I'm a senior product analyst at Leeds Digital, and I've worked for the last 6 years or so in product management and business strategy roles across a mix of e-commerce businesses and the academic publishing sector. And prior to becoming a product manager, I worked for 6 or 7 years in digital marketing in the publishing industry as well. So today I'm going to draw on kind of my experiences in these quite varied industries, very different types of businesses, and some very diverse types of product teams, to talk about a common experience throughout that time of feeling sometimes like I was working on a product with a team and, you know, smashing things out, delivering great features and things for our product, but sometimes felt like there was no overarching strategy tying everything together. And so looking back, maybe some of those roadmaps of features were a bit disparate and disjointed. So what I'm going to talk about today is trying to reconnect that kind of executive board level vision with the tactical product roadmap and all the layers that are needed in between to make those connections. So as Chris said, Joe and I are going to answer questions at the very end of the session, but as you've got questions as you go along, just bang them in the chat, and then we'll come to them at the end. Okay, so let's start first in our comfort zone, the product backlog. Every product manager's got one. It's probably as long as your arm. It's got loads of great features in there. Everyone's really happy with what's in there. You've got maybe new analytics you want to track and new payment options you want to add, or some poorly handled search queries that you need to deal with, some technical debt that you need to improve, and then a load of bug fixes and things like that. So a nice backlog full of juicy stuff, everyone knows what's in there, everyone knows what's coming in the sprint, happy days, great. And even better, that backlog forms part of a wider product roadmap where you've got even more big ideas for super cool stuff that the bosses have agreed we should build, fantastic. And then someone comes along and says, so why is that on the roadmap? How was it decided that that should be in there? And how was it decided that it should be prioritized in that way? And if you can answer those questions as well, then great. Unless any of your answers are along the lines of, well, it's just to shut up Janine really, because she really hates that thing and she wants to do it differently and she's been going on about it for ages and we just need to get her off our backs. So that's why that's on there. Or, well, you know, it's Tim's big idea and he's the boss, so we better do what he says. Or, well, competitors X down the road have started doing it and seems to be working well for them, so we should probably get on and do that as well. Sound familiar? It certainly does to me. They're definitely answers that I've given in the past or along those sorts of lines. But really, what we should be saying is how that ties into what the business is looking to achieve in the next few years, how your product is contributing to that bigger vision and that bigger strategy. So where's the strategy? Have we got a product strategy? Have we got a business strategy? Or maybe they do exist, but what the product team are doing doesn't really seem to be aligned with that. Maybe it's because it's not been shared with you, or maybe you weren't part of that conversation. If that's the case, or if they don't exist at all, then don't worry, you're in the right place. We're going to sort you out today. So what is your business really about? What is your vision? Who do you want to be? What's the business trying to achieve in the next few years, and how are you planning to achieve it? Not just in commercial terms, but in terms of your areas of focus and the steps that you're going to take to get there. Your product and your business cannot be everything to everybody. So what's unique about you, and who is your true target market? What do they really need from you? Once you can answer those questions, then you've got your business strategy. And what's really important is about making the tough choices. What's not part of the strategy? What are we going to drop? What are we not going to focus on, so that we can focus on what's most important and not try to do too much and then risk doing everything kind of in an average way instead of a few things in a brilliant way. So I'm going to go into now what a strategic plan might look like. But before I do that, just a quick caveat. I'm going to talk through this at a business level strategic plan, like executive board level plan. But if you're here today and you feel like, well, I don't really have any influence at that level, so is this actually going to be relevant to me? Don't worry, because this process can also be applied at the product level, and I will come to that towards the end of my talk. Or it can be applied somewhere in between the kind of total business and the product. If you're a very big business, you might have a level in between where this could be used. For example, we used this process when I worked at Asda in the online grocery team, and we applied this treating online grocery for the purpose of this process as if it was a business in its own right. So when I'm talking about business strategy, it could be an entire business, or it could be an arm or department of a business, or it could be a significant product within that business. Okay, so this is what my idea of a strategic plan looks like. It's not a known model. You're not going to find it in the business literature. This is a model that I've created, that I've used a few times with some different businesses that I think works really well, and that combines a few different models that you might recognize. So, you know, it's not known, it's not copyrighted. Maybe it should be. If anyone goes away from this talk and makes the millions, please let me know, because I really need to copyright this. But basically what I'm going to do is talk through the different parts of this process. In theory, we should work from the top down. In reality, especially when you're first doing this, you'll probably jump around the levels a lot, and that's fine. What's important is that we get there in the end, and the process of getting there. So a bit of a summary of what each of these means. So firstly, your vision statement. Your vision statement is something that should kind of last forever, that explains the purpose of your business's existence, who you are, like a guiding North Star that inspires your customers and your stakeholders and your colleagues. And then your mission's a bit different. There's a lot of different opinions on what constitutes a vision statement and what constitutes a mission statement and what each of them are for. Often they're both used to mean the same thing. But in my experience, I think there is a distinct difference between the two, and there is a distinct need for the two as well. So whilst the vision is something that lasts forever, the mission is something that will just last a few years, something that we're aiming to achieve in the medium to long term, something that explains the change that we aspire to make over the next few years. And then the strategy tells us how we're going to do that, how we're going to execute on achieving that mission, and where we're going to focus our efforts in order to do that. And then the KPIs we'll use to monitor whether we're on the right track. The strategy and the mission will last a few years, and we can't wait until the end of those few years to see if we've hit it or not. We need to keep a track along the way and course correct if necessary to make sure that we're on track along the way to be successful. So that's the business part of the strategic plan. Once you've got that, then you can feed that down to your products. And depending on the size of your business, you might have one product or you might have multiple digital products. It doesn't matter. What matters is that each product has got its own strategy that explains how we're going to focus our efforts on that specific product and how that feeds into achieving the bigger business mission. And then, of course, we've got our product roadmap that sits underneath that, which Joe's going to talk about, the outcomes that we want to focus on driving forward for our product over the next 12 to maybe 36 months. Okay, so that's the strategic plan in a nutshell. How the hell do we get started? Because that's a lot, and a vision statement as a starting point is really hard to do. What we need to do first is really understand where our business is at now. What's the current state of play now? And to do that, we need to spend a good chunk of time doing our research, going through a discovery phase of our entire business. So there's a few examples of sources of information there, mix of primary and secondary sources, a mix of qualitative and quantitative information. But what's important is that at this very first step, it's not just one person or a couple of people or the board doing it. What's important is that a large group of people, as many people as possible, are involved in this research stage to get people engaged in the process from the start, feeling like they've contributed to the creation of this new business strategy. Once you've done that, you're going to have a million documents with all sorts of information in all sorts of different formats and thinking, okay, we've got loads of information now, what the hell do we do with it? For me, the easiest step from here is to do a good old-fashioned SWOT analysis. So what are the strengths and weaknesses internally to your business, and what are the opportunities and threats externally that could affect your business or that you could leverage? So you might do this in the form of post-it notes on a board like I did here in this example. And you're probably going to have hundreds of post-it notes feeding into it, and some of them might conflict, some of them might be ideas that would potentially take the business in two different directions. You might even have the same point in multiple boxes, like one of our strengths is our people, but one of our weaknesses is our people, and they might come from different angles and mean different things. That's fine, it will be messy at this stage, but what will also be evident is that there's too much for you to go at here. You can't do everything. You won't have the time, you won't have the money, and you might not have the expertise to do everything that you've discussed. But you've ideated at this stage and you're starting to understand where things might move to in the next few years. And it's this process of discovery and the discussion that you have around it where the value lies. By going through this as a group of people who are really invested in making a positive change for your business, themes will come to light and shine through as the areas of focus for your strategic plan. And that's when you can then start making decisions about where you will and won't focus. So now we've done our research, in theory, what would it look like for a real business? So let's pretend that Cologne is a beauty brand. I've totally made this business up last weekend. I don't really know much about the beauty industry, so I don't really know why I chose that. And if anybody on the call does know anything about the industry, and you think anything that I talk about in relation to it throughout this presentation is a load of bollocks, then please just humour me and run with it for the sake of illustrating this theory. So let's say Cologne are working on coming up with a strategic plan to take the business forward over the next 5 years. Here's what their SWOT analysis might look like. So you can see a bit about who their customers are, a bit about their employees, their numbers, and their distribution channels. Okay, and then on the downside, their digital channels are not working well for them, probably because their website's not really up to the job in the modern world, and they haven't got the right people internally to do anything about that. And although they've got great employee loyalty and low turnover, the diversity of their workforce is lacking. Externally, they know that there are tools and technologies out there that they're not taking advantage of yet. The industry's growing, and there's a market in the UK that they're not tapping into, which presents an opportunity that they could leverage. On the other hand, their incoming generation, so we know that their customers are older women, and the sort of new older women coming in are more digitally savvy than they've ever been before, and that poses a threat. Then they're losing sales to online retailers because they're not strong in that area, and they're losing sales to bigger international brands as well. So you can already see some themes starting to come out through the SWOT analysis. So now we understand the business, we can start working on our strategic plan. So let's go through these one by one. First, your vision statement. Here's a few examples of some well-known brands and their vision statements. So you can see they tend to be quite short, quite grandiose, and something that can almost never be achieved. That guiding North Star that we can always strive to do more for, do more with, do more for our customers. So what would a Cologne vision statement look like? Maybe like this. So what does this tell us about Cologne? I think if we expanded that out into a longer sentence, it might be something like that. They want older women to still feel that they can enjoy wearing makeup and looking after their hair and skin, and have that feel like an enjoyable experience, not just a daily routine. So it gives us an essence of the company, a guiding star of who they are, but not much direction if you're the Cologne website's product manager trying to make decisions about what should be on your roadmap and in what order. So we're going to need a lot more detail than this. So let's move on to the next stage, the mission statement. Remember, this is something that lasts a few years, then you'd maybe replace it with a new mission. It's something we look to achieve. So in the context of the research that we've done and the SWOT analysis that we've done, we know that Cologne is a UK beauty brand, but now they want to look to expand globally. We've seen opportunities in that. The current customer base is primarily white, middle-class, older women, and so they want to diversify their demographic to reach a wider customer base. And there's a clear direction in this mission statement as well, that digital is very much on the agenda. So a bit more specific now, getting an idea of where we're going to focus our efforts over the next few years. And the product manager for the website is probably getting a sense that there's going to be some focus on internationalizing the website, modernizing the website, maybe problems like supporting multiple languages and international payment methods might be coming down the pipeline. But probably still a lot of big questions. How is this international and demographic expansion going to be executed? Who exactly are we targeting? What about our existing customer base? Are we changing anything for them? Is this all going to be executed online, or are we opening stores abroad as well? Lots of unanswered questions still. And that's where the strategy then comes into play. It'll give us some detail on how we're going to execute against this mission. So a model I like to use for this part of the plan is Hambrick and Fredrickson's Strategy Diamond. And I like this tool because it really forces you to think about all different angles of the business, some of which you might already know, but kind of take for granted and not communicate and not talk about explicitly. So firstly, the arenas. This is probably the most interesting part of the strategy, the most fun bit to come up with, because this is about where we're going to be active, the choices we make about where we're going to compete in the market. And it's important at this stage that we are ambitious in talking about not just our existing markets and arenas, but any new arenas that we want to enter, but also being brutal, making choices, tough choices about where we will focus and where we won't. You don't have to address all of the points if they're not relevant, but it's important to keep it succinct, but make sure that the important arenas are defined, new and existing, because a failure to do that will just result in confusion and a loss of focus, and we'll end up trying to be everywhere for everybody doing everything, and that will dilute our strategy. So then onto our vehicles. Once we understand where the company will be operating, we can figure out how we're going to get there, how we'll get the presence and credibility that we want in the desired arenas. So we need to think here about the skills and knowledge that we've got internally. Again, being honest with ourselves, can we do this ourselves, or do we need some external help to help us do this? Weighing up the pros and cons of each vehicle and being pragmatic about where you'll need help. And then onto our differentiators. Any strategy worth its salt needs to cover how you're going to win in the marketplace. What's special about your business versus your competitors? And again, be honest, be realistic. You can't offer the highest quality prices, products for the lowest possible prices. High quality means higher cost. And if you try to do both, you'll probably just get stuck somewhere in the middle, offering an average product at an average price, and then you've lost your differentiator. There's nothing special or unique about average. Okay, and then staging, the sequence and the speed of our major strategic moves. What do we need to do first before anything else can happen? Is there a window of opportunity that we need to wait for or fit into before we miss the boat? These sorts of foundational moves will dictate the timeline for the rest of the strategy. So, for example, before we can do anything else, we need to get our data into shape to inform the rest of our work. That's quite a common piece to appear in this staging section of the strategy. And then lastly, the economic logic. So at the heart of every business strategy, of course, is how are we going to make this profitable in the long term? And that will be by sustaining that competitive advantage that you create by delivering on the rest of your strategy in combination, all those parts successfully working together to make that profitable for the business. Saw a few questions coming in there, so we'll consider those at the end. So what would this look like in practice for a real business, or in this case, a completely fictional business? So Coloni's arenas. So you can see here a mix of their new and old arenas. And as I've said before, what's implicitly not mentioned is equally important. So you can see they want to focus their target market on white and Asian, higher affluence, empty nesters. They've not mentioned younger demographics or lower affluence demographics. That's not to say that those people can't or won't buy products from Coloni. They may well do, but we're not going to focus on specifically catering for their needs because they're not our main focus. In terms of vehicles, no change in the distribution channels, but they recognise that at the minute they've got a lack of internal digital capability, and so they're going to need some help to do that. The differentiators are things that any new startup would struggle to replicate, and also they don't have any other direct competitor with their sort of brand proposition in their target market. Staging, they recognise that before they can succeed in the new arenas, they need to address the gaps in their workforce. The website's letting them down, so before they can expand their brand presence and enter these new countries, online first, as per that last bullet point, then they need to address their web and their digital presence and complement that big digital marketing drives that they're going to have to do when they enter a new country. So these are the things that they must do first before the rest of the strategy can really get underway. And that bit will really help us prioritise our roadmap of activity. So lastly, onto the economic logic. Obviously, price is really important for Coloni's brand perception. They're a luxury brand, and so premium prices are expected. We know they're planning to invest in digital, so that will help them to grow their online sales and offset their decline in high street sales. And in the long term, as they expand into more countries worldwide, new demographics, they'll benefit from economies of scale through that global presence. So that's what a strategy could look like. But then what do we need to do to keep a track, to give confidence to ourselves and our stakeholders that we can actually achieve that along the way and that we're on track to achieving that? And that's where these KPIs come in. So some of the things we mentioned in the SWOT analysis earlier that now form part of our strategy are, for example, that Colonia are losing market share in the UK. So that's something that they would look to improve again in the long term. The revenue growth has been there for the last 10 years, but the rate of growth has started slowing down in recent years, so they'll want to turn that back around. Profit margins have been stable but flat for quite some time, but the economic logic of our strategy includes those economies of scale as we expand our reach and growing our online sales directly instead of through third parties who take a cut. So that should enable us to improve our profit margins. Our online sales channel is very small at the minute, and those in-store concession sales are slowing down. So as I said, we want to grow those direct online sales. We need to address the lack of diversity in our workforce, which is reflective of our current target market, but we know that we want to change and grow our target market. And a key element to our strategy, of course, is the international expansion. So we'll need to make sure that we are actually selling in those new markets. And then lastly, it's really important that through all this change that we maintain the integrity of our brand and the perception of our brand as a luxury, higher end brand in that marketplace. So these sorts of KPIs will help us monitor our progress across all the different parts of the strategy in the coming months and years, because without all parts of the strategy progressing successfully, the plan will fall down and we won't achieve our mission. Because we can see in the strategy that each part of it is quite mutually reinforcing. So if one thing falls down and isn't moving along with everything else, then it's kind of like a domino effect and the whole thing will fall down. So that's the business part of our strategy dealt with. Once we've got that in place, then we can start to understand how the specific products in our business will contribute to the achievement of that business mission. And depending on the size of the business, you might have one product or multiple products. And if you were, say, an early startup, you might feel that this whole strategic plan is a bit overkill. Maybe your product is your entire business at this point. So there wouldn't be much value in having a business strategy and a separate product strategy, in which case that's fine, just combine it and have one. But if you're a very big business, you might have multiple products that contribute in different ways to that business strategy. Whatever the setup, make sure that each product has got a strategy that explains how it feeds the business. And before you embark on this product part of the plan, just be sure that what you're talking about, what you're thinking about is an entire product and not just a feature or component. The product being an entire end-to-end experience that provides value for the user, whereas a feature being a part of that product, like the search or navigation, for example. The search feature can't exist in its own right. It doesn't have any value on its own without the rest of the products around it. And therefore doesn't need its own strategy. The strategy's got to be at that whole product level so that all the different features and components feed into it cohesively. Even if each feature's got its own Scrum team and its own product manager, that's fine and that's necessary in a very big company and a very big product. But don't try and write a strategy just for a feature or a component like an API layer or something. Okay, so how would we go about creating our product strategy? Basically, just do all of that again, but this time focused on your individual product rather than the business as a whole. And again, draw on other people, involve your sales team, customer services team, data analyst, speak to your customers, most importantly of all, and understand in a real level of detail how your product stands today. Bang all that into a good SWOT analysis for your product and then form your strategic plan. But probably don't use the strategy diamond this time. It's a bit overkill for a product. It doesn't really work for a product. Instead, I like to use Roman Pitchler's product vision board because it works really well for both new and existing products. And it follows a similar sort of flow to what we talked about earlier. So we've got a vision statement for our product, and then sometimes I like to add a mission statement for the product as well for the reasons that I outlined earlier. Especially for a new product where the first year or so is going to feel quite far away from the ultimate vision that you've got for your product. That mission will be quite specific in that first year of development and launch. And then work through the other parts. So specify based on your discovery research and your SWOT analysis who your target market are, what problem or need your product will address for them, why they'll want to buy or use your product. What is your product briefly and what its differentiators are, why people would choose it over a competitor's product. And then lastly, your business goals. So this is where it really ties into that business strategic plan. How does the existence and the continued development of this product tie into the higher level business strategy and mission? What's the economic logic behind the product? What are the commercial goals for this product? So for coloning, that might look like this. So you can see how the website product vision aligns quite well with the business vision, which was to make beauty an experience where age is no barrier. This channel allows for Cologne customers to experiment with new looks in private, no embarrassment of sitting on a stool in boots having your makeup done and then hating what the makeup artist's done with your face and feeling really uncomfortable that people are watching while you can't see what's happening, but still online being able to offer that personal advice experience digitally if needed. The mission is quite clear from the rest of the strategic plan, really, that they need to modernise the site, improve that luxury experience aspect and really do the Cologne brand justice, because it's going to become that shop window for the brand across the globe, and they really need to grow that website as a sales channel. So then the detail that sits under that mission, we've got our target customers, not really any different for the website. For some products, your target customers may be more specific. If you're a big business with a lot of digital products, different products may serve different segments of your customer base. In this case, it's the same for both the business and the product on its own. What are their needs? What do these people want? Why would they come to us or our website for help? And when they're there, what do we need to do for them to keep them there? This covers kind of how we'll make them feel and how we'll keep them coming back. A description of what our product is, what it's about, and what makes it special versus another beauty website, which is giving that luxury experience and that confidence factor to these women to help them enjoy their beauty and their experience. And lastly, our business goals. So we had that clear long-term KPI about direct online revenue. So that KPI will obviously be owned by this product, but it will also contribute to other elements of the strategy too, like increasing the overall revenue, improving the profit margins, and playing obviously a massive role in how they're going to enter these new geographical markets. So it might feel a bit repetitive. Some of it's quite similar to what was in the business strategy, but think about the audience for this part of the plan. Some employees, more junior employees maybe, might feel that the top level business strategy is a bit too far removed for them to really feel like they can make a difference to it and feel like they can contribute to achieving it. And the product strategy might be a bit more relatable, a bit closer to their day job and what they do and what they can offer. And I guess that's a really important part of this whole process, as I talked about. And the first step, the research, is engaging your teams and your people throughout this process, making them a part of it, taking their opinions on board, communicating to them as we go along the way, as we go through the process, engaging their opinions again and communicating the decisions that you make again. Your people are the ones who are going to make it happen. So don't just cascade it down to them and ask them to get on board with the finished artifact. Involve them in the process of creating it, get their buy-in from the start. It'll be a lot easier than trying to get their buy-in at the end. Okay, so then the last step is the product roadmap, where we define the product level outcomes, a bit like the business level KPIs. So I'm going to hand over to Joe soon to take us from here, and he'll talk about how we use that product strategy to create that outcome-based product roadmap. But a few key takeaways from me then. Firstly, don't go in cold. It can be tempting because, of course, we all already know so much about a business, but you will definitely learn new things by doing your research. And it will make you think about things that are maybe not part of your day job and where you're focused most of the time. It'll give you a more rounded view. 2, you can't be everything to everybody. I've said it quite a few times. So be ready to make those big decisions now. Be brutal about where it's really important for you to be really good and really focus your efforts. Involve your people from the start. I've already said, don't make this all a board or senior manager level task and discussion. Yes, you'll make the decisions, there's tough choices, but get your team's input. Make sure all parts of the plan are on track. Your KPIs and your outcome-based roadmaps are really key to making sure that you're on track. And you should have formal reviews, maybe quarterly, and course correct if needed. You might need to adjust the numbers that you put around those goals sometimes, and that's okay, as long as you're keeping track that you are on the road to achieving that mission. And then lastly, refresh your plan every few years. The strategic plan isn't meant to be a forever plan. It's a sort of medium-term plan to move the business forward to the next stage and then get a new mission once you've evolved to reaching that stage. But don't change the plan every year, because people will lose track then of what's important, and it kind of defeats the object of having the strategy in the first place if it's going to keep changing before you've really achieved it. Course correct, but don't completely overhaul it. So that's it from me. I hope that you found this useful and that you might be able to put to use this strategic planning process. Don't feel that you have to blindly follow it if it doesn't work for you. Adapt it to your needs, big business, small startup, whatever you are, flex it and take the essence of the framework and adapt it how you see fit. And of course, if you need any help with undertaking this process, Digital are your friends and we're here to help. So thank you very much. Back to Chris.
Thank you very much, Sammi. We're going to take a short break before we start with Joe. Before we do, 2 quick things. If you put in the questions in the chat, I'm grabbing a copy of all of those so that we can pass them back to the speakers towards the end. Also taking the lead from Claire at Step Change. Obviously, it's a bit difficult, a bit anonymous, us all being on a Zoom call. So feel free when you come back to adjust, rename your name within Zoom to give us an idea of who you are and what you do and where you do it. But we'll come back at 22, which is just enough time to charge a glass, to order a takeaway